Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace, love, and blessings of Allah be with you. Ramadan Mubarak. May Allah bless you and accept all of your fasting and prayers. And in this short video, I'm going to share one hadith, one saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, which actually gives us a way to make our prayers more powerful, more direct, more meaningful, and for us to benefit more from our prayers. I think one of the reasons people don't pray as much as they would like to is because they don't actually gain any personal benefit as they're doing it, as far as they're aware. And I'm going to share with you a kind of like a technique that is codified and hidden within this hadith, because many of us may have heard the hadith before, the saying of the Prophet before, peace and blessings upon him, but we haven't realized that it's giving us a way to transform our mindset as we do our prayers. So it's a very famous hadith, and it's called the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, of the Archangel Gabriel, where he came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, and asked him several questions. And one of them was, Akhbarni anil ihsan, inform me or tell me about ihsan, which I translate as spiritual excellence. And the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, said, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. Very beautiful, very succinct, very deep response. The Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, said it's to worship Allah as if you see him, and though you do not see him, indeed he sees you. Or, although you cannot see him, indeed he sees you. Within this hadith, if we think about this in terms of presence and in terms of being present-minded during prayer, we can actually notice that every little indication within this hadith is pointing us towards having our full mind and presence there during prayer. So I'm going to break this down. I'm going to share several little gems that I understand to be hidden within this hadith. Okay, the first, an ta'bud Allah, to worship Allah. Already there is a hidden indication. See, the key here is you can't worship Allah in the past or in the future. There is only one moment in time in which you can actually worship Allah, and that is this moment, right now. In this moment, there is nothing you can do to change worship that you did or didn't do in the past. In this moment, there's nothing you can do about whether or not you worship in the future. But every moment brings its own necessity. Every moment brings its own obligation. Every moment has its own prayer. And that might be a literal prayer, like one of the 5 daily prayers. It might be another form of worship, like fasting, you might be doing right now, even as you're just watching this video. But every moment has its own particular way of connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, says, An ta'bud Allah, to worship Allah, already there's an indication that your mind must be in the here and now. How can your mind be in the here and now? The little indication that's here is to worship Allah. If we understand the whole hadith to be about present-mindedness, the indication here is put all of your attention into what you are doing right now. If all you're doing right now is watching this video, put all of your attention into watching this video. If all you're doing right now is sitting or breathing, put all of your attention into sitting and breathing. So, an ta'bud Allah, put all of your attention into what you're doing. Now you will notice the moment you put all of your attention into what you're doing, you're instantly present. Suddenly your mind is quiet. You're no longer distracted by the past or the future. You're all here, all now. An ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarahu, as if you see him. Now that is a fascinating thing to say. Ka'annaka tarahu, as if you see him. Because by definition, Allah is laysa kamithlihi shay. There is nothing like him. So how is it possible that you worship as if you see him when it's literally impossible to imagine Allah? Any attempt you make to imagine Allah, whatever it is that you're imagining, that is nothing like Allah. So when the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, says, Ka'annaka tarahu, the closest you will ever be to being in Allah's presence, or to the best state of mind you can be in during prayer, is to simply have a completely quiet mind. When your mind is completely quiet, it's as if you are automatically in the divine presence. There are two ideas about presence. One is to be in the present moment yourself, to be aware of this moment. The other goes a little bit deeper, which is when you're in the present moment, uh, for when you spend a little bit more time in the present moment, you get to a point where you start to realize that you're in Allah's presence. And that is like real muraqabah, where you're not just watching yourself, but you also realize you are being watched. And that brings us on to the next part of the hadith. But before we move on to the next part of the hadith, كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. Here's a cool little exercise you can do that will help to put yourself in this state of mind. The idea is, you might have heard people say you have tens of thousands of thoughts every day, right? And if you ever, for example, if you go to Taraweeh, or if you're praying long prayers, you might notice sometimes your mind wanders. You have a thought that comes in and it leads to another one and another one, and it goes on like that. Now, there's a very simple practice, which is to notice the thoughts and drop them. And it's kind of like, if you have one thought and another thought and another, notice if you can see the gap between one thought and the next without getting caught up in that train of thinking. And I'll give you a cool little way to do that right now. I want you to ask yourself right now, take a deep breath, and believe me, everything I'm sharing with you now, you're going to use in your next prayer. So it's a great idea to pay full attention right now. Right now, I want you to ask yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be. I wonder what my next thought will be. Did you suddenly have thousands of thoughts rushing into your mind? Or did your mind quiet down a little bit between one thought and the next? I wonder what my next thought will be. Because I know for me right now, as I say it, my mind goes completely quiet and I'm completely here present with you. So, an ta'bud Allah, put your full attention into what you're doing to worship Allah. كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ, as if you see Him, but no thought you have of Allah could possibly compare to the reality of Allah. So the best idea is to quiet your mind, and one way to do that is to notice the gap between one thought and the next. أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. If you cannot see Him, indeed He sees you. If you cannot see Him, indeed He sees you. Now, this is fascinating for two reasons, but let's look at let's break this down into two parts. So, if you cannot see Him, indeed He sees you. Let's look at the indeed He sees you part. I want you to notice right now that Allah sees you. Notice that Allah sees you right now. Where does your attention go? I know for me, when I notice Allah sees me, my attention immediately is like, okay, what am I doing with my hands? Allah is seeing me, okay. Immediately my attention goes into my body. And that's the third secret to having full mindful presence during prayer and making prayer more powerful. A very simple way you can instantly be present and instantly be more awake and alive during prayer is to notice what's happening now in your body, to keep some of your attention on what is happening right now inside of your body. For example, a simple way of doing this is right now, take one breath, and as you're breathing in, notice it, and as you're breathing out, notice it. The moment you do that, they say that with one conscious breath, you become fully aware of this moment again. Just by noticing what's happening in your body. And if you're doing this in a long prayer like Taraweeh, what can happen is you might notice a little bit of discomfort, like, oh wow, I've been standing for a while. And just by noticing what's happening in your body, immediately your mind is taken away from the past, it's taken away from the future, and it's almost as if you, whatever you're experiencing in your body right now, it's as if you're saying to yourself, if all Allah wants me to do is be in this position now, then I'll be a soldier and stand in this position. If all Allah wants me to do is be in sujood right now, then if you're in sujood, then it's as if every sensation and feeling and comfort and discomfort your body is experiencing can be a reminder that you are with Allah, and this is what Allah wants you to go through right now. I have a deeper process on this, which maybe we'll cover in another video, called the inner salam method. But for now, the simple way is notice what's happening now inside of your body, and immediately you'll notice you become present. And again, the reason I'm giving you all of these different ways and indications of how to be present is we're going to use them all in your very next prayer. Okay? Your very next prayer, what I want you to do is, as you stand up, the moment you say Allahu Akbar, you're leaving behind you the past, you're ignoring everything in the dunya, you're ignoring everything in the world. As you say Allahu Akbar, and you're making yourself fully present. And the simple ways to do that so far, an ta'bud Allah, ignore the past and the future and put your full attention into what you're doing. Ka'annaka tarahu, as if you see him, no thought is comparable to Allah. So we drop all of our thinking, notice the gap between thoughts, and immediately you're present. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. If you cannot see him, indeed, he sees you. Just knowing Allah is watching you, you automatically put your attention into what's happening now in your body, and that also makes you more present. Now, I wrote a book called Inside the Soul of Islam, and everything I just shared with you is in that book, in the chapter on ihsan, but that on spiritual excellence. But when I wrote the book, I gave it to a scholar, a brilliant scholar, Sheikh Sharif Banna, and he looked at it and he enjoyed the chapter, and he said, I'm going to give you a secret that a great scholar, a mufti, shared about this hadith. And I said, okay, good. I love the secrets. Tell me. And he said, look, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. The last part of the hadith. If you cannot see him, indeed he sees you. Now in English, we translate that as فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ. If you cannot see him. And I don't know if there's any Arabic students watching this, but the verb in this sentence is what? If you cannot see him, there's two verbs. There's cannot, if you cannot see him. In Arabic, so there's tarahu, see him, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ tarahu, if you cannot see him. But the Arabic word is takun, which comes from the root word kana, right? Now, if there's any Arabic students there, what does kana mean? The verb kana. It means to be, right? Kana is to be. So we translate it in English as if you cannot see him, indeed he sees you. But what it literally means is, if you are not, you see him. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ. So what the scholar says is, it's not فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. It's فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ. If you are not, you see him. When you are not, you see him. And I explained this to a student once, and she said, if you're not what? You see him. And I said, no. If you are not, if you get you out of the way, if you get your ego out of the way, if you get your egoic thoughts about the past and the future out of the way, then you see him. Right? So this is the spiritual understanding that we can, through presence, through being fully aware of this moment, we drop our ego and we're able to really see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So finally, the simple exercise to do after this video, there are these 4 or 5 little ways in this hadith of being present and aware during prayer. I want you to go into the next prayer of the 5 daily prayers, go into it and let it be a time for you to really connect with yourself, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let it be like a meditation break, but better, because it's the best possible form of meditation, which is the prayer given to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May the peace, love, and blessings of Allah be with you always.